Welcome back to the Dirt Road. I'm here with Mr. Rick.
That's Mike over there. What's happening, baby?
What's going on, brother?
Today is October something.
October
I don't know. All I know is that we
20th. October 20th.
We are just a little over 2 weeks away from one of the biggest events in world history, Mike.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's coming
Yanks
up
will
very
be world
soon.
champions. They made the World
You
Series.
thought we were going somewhere else with that.
They made the World Series for the first time since 2009. It's an exciting time here in New York.
It's a long time coming for them.
Mets still have an outside shot. Got to win 2 in a row in LA, but who knows? They may.
They might do it. You never know. Some stranger things have happened.
Stranger things have happened, and secondary to that, we have another almost as important event coming up in about 2 weeks.
The election.
The election.
Early voting in New York starts October 26th. Bank your vote. Go out. Vote early. Make sure your vote's in. Avoid all the craziness that's probably going to happen on Election Day.
Except if you do it by where I work. Mike, they have an early polling station. I can't get fucking parking, and I have to pay for the lot. I hate it.
Make sure you go to Rick's work location. Okay, just fill that place up. Fill up the parking. Everything.
God, don't do that. Anyway, welcome to our headline edition. Our next edition is going to be on the campaign itself. We're going to talk a little bit about the the interview with Brett Baer.
Brett Baer interview and a few other things.
Just where we are in the campaign,
campaign
what's kind of going on. But this is our headline edition where I'm going to throw 5 things that happened this week out at Mike. He doesn't have any idea what I'm going to throw at him, so we're not looking for any sort of in-depth discussions or anything, just raw reactions and so forth, but they are important items, most of them anyway. But before we do, Mike, if I could just respond real quickly to a couple of comments.
Absolutely. Comments are minor. They're important. That's what we want most, guys.
So we did an episode last week about the Federal Department of Education and whether or not it should be cut. And there were 2 responses to that, 2 comments, I guess, to that particular episode. I'll read them real quickly. Just 2 moms who play Warcraft said the federal DOE is why my kid had to wear a mask to school for 2 years and play by himself at recess. They threatened to cut funding to the district if they didn't comply. They were telling children they had to wear masks. They're in a group at school, etc., etc. They are permanently damaged from what they did during COVID and will never be the same. Totally agree, by the way. I was there in front of that classroom and I saw what it did to kids. And then just 2 moms ends it with screw the federal DOE, defund them now. And then similarly, DCL responded to my response to them and said, yes, the federal Department of Ed should be abolished, not because they spend $68 billion. It should be abolished because of the indoctrination of our children, etc., etc. I don't disagree with either one of those things.
No.
At all, honestly, except for the part about the abolished. And the only response I would have is logic can't end when your feelings change. So if we're going to follow that logic, then we have to follow that logic all the way through. Mike had brought up how the State Department pretty much bribes countries around the world to adopt our policies on everything from LGBTQ to many other things, or threaten to withhold
military
funding. So they do that too. So do we then abolish the Department of State and just not have a diplomatic corps? I mean, that would be insane. The Army, the military, they made them get the COVID vaccines. They almost destroyed our military. They're going through woke indoctrination there. Is anybody suggesting that we just defund and get rid of the Department of Defense? No. So I don't disagree with either one of your points, but I think you're talking more from emotion. Because if you were talking just from the logic, which is okay, that logic, if that's how you feel, that's fine. People are entitled to different opinions. But I just don't think it's fair to have that logic for one federal department that you don't like. If you're going to have that logic, the Department of State, the Department of Defense, probably every department, is doing the same shit. Did the same stuff during COVID. Is the woke indoctrination, the DEI, all of that stuff is going on. So to me, the answer is not to abolish. To me, the answer is to elect a president who will run those departments the way you and I would like, and elect congressmen and congresswomen who will do the proper oversight and pass laws that actually not restrict, but keep those agencies in line, because they've become our federal lawmaking authorities as it is now, because Congress refuses to do it. So that's my only answer to the 2 of you.
That's the major issue.
Yeah. Again, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I don't think being on either side of wanting the Department of Education abolished or not is something any of us are going to have to answer to St. Peter to when we get up to the pearly gates. It's not that big of a deal. But if you want to follow that logic and your reasoning is because of the COVID stuff and the DEI and the woke indoctrination, well, then that logic has to apply to the Department of State and the Department of Defense and every other department, in my opinion. But anyway, Mike, you have a thought on that before we move on?
I get it. I get the reasoning, what they're saying, and I'm not exactly opposed to abolishing it. I think reforming it might be a better option, but I think you're right, though, when I say at the end of it, when you get down to the core of the whole issue, it's about Congress. It's about Congress delegating authority that they're supposed to keep to themselves and actually use to maintain some kind of control over these agencies.
Yep.
But they don't. They relegate that authority out to the agencies, and the agencies act as their own lawmaking authority, and they make up rules that are just arbitrary and ridiculous and go out and abuse people.
Yeah.
So I think that's more where we're seeing the disconnect, is that Congress is not doing its job, which, again, Congress's approval rating has been hovering in the teens for a very, very long time now, for good reason, because they're useless.
Yeah. And so, look, I don't disagree with anything either one of them said as far as their points. I mean,
no, their points are spot on.
I know it better than they do because I saw it firsthand. I worked there, Yeah. And what we did to a generation of children with the COVID stuff was abhorrent. And I'm not in favor of any of this woke crap either. But again, logic is logic. So if that's the logic that you're using to say you want to defund and abolish the Department of Ed, those other departments are doing the exact same shit. So
yeah, that needs to be reformed. A lot of things
are you willing to
it
get
comes
rid
back
of the
to
Department
Congress.
of State and the Department of Defense? Do you want to not have, federal control over the military or federal control over diplomacy? That would be insane. So
You got to rein them in. You got to put Congress back in its seat and make them do their jobs again and rein them in.
I certainly don't disagree.
As a side note to that, though,
yeah, sure.
most people haven't probably heard about yet.
What's that?
Kennedy won his lawsuit. And
Bobby Kennedy?
Yeah,
What
he had a lawsuit about the COVID vaccines, that they should not be called vaccines. He took it all the way to the Supreme Court. He won in the Supreme Court.
Can you just educate me a little on that? Why the objection to calling it a vaccine again?
Because it's not a vaccine. It's not designed or implemented the way a vaccine would work.
Which would be?
So a vaccine would take a piece of like RNA or something like that, or a piece of DNA basically from the virus itself, introduce it to your body. Mm-hmm. Your body would then recognize it as foreign and not supposed to be there, and it would create antibodies to fight that particular virus or whatever it is. This basically tells your body, you inject it, and it tells your body to create these spike proteins,
right?
And that your body will then respond to an attack or whatever.
But is it just semantics, or is this really important?
No, it's actually important. The science is there to back it up. This is extremely dangerous, and it's extremely experimental. It's never,
sure. But I'm talking about the wording.
The wording matters about, because if it's a vaccine, it has to be specifically dead pieces of that virus that are being used.
So what do you want to call it? A shot?
Some medical, medical intervention, whatever you want to call it, but not a vaccine.
Okay.
Because it's a misnomer. Because what you're doing by saying vaccine is you're making people believe it's somehow a safe thing, when the reality is they had no idea what it would do. Mm-hmm. They fabricated their study showing it was safe. The CDC covered up the fabrication. This all came out during the court cases up to the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And it's not reported anyway, because of course they won't report that, right? Big Pharma. But there was a tremendous amount of negative information that came out about these things, about them actually legitimately hurting a lot of people with these things. I mean, I don't think we've seen the full effect of how much damage this is going to do.
No, well, you can't, right? I mean, it's going to take years and years before we know the exact stuff. I got to tell you, I guess maybe we could do a full episode on this.
We will.
What got me with that whole thing when it was happening, and again, like everybody else, I mean, we were all kind of worried, and especially at first, and not knowing what was going on. But when the vaccine came out, which again, Trump was responsible for Operation Warp Speed.
Yep.
Getting this out, and I guess he had to. I don't know, politics, whatever. But when they say and they said it over and over and over again, 100% safe and effective.
And it was neither.
But that's when anybody with a brain should have said, "Well, whoa, hold on one second."
Nothing.
If you've seen any advertisement for any medication,
yep.
Right at the end they give you all these warnings. Could cause anything from drowsiness to anal explosions, right? I mean, just anything. And even though it may be a slight chance, by law they have to tell you those things. And nothing. My Tylenol's not 100% effective. Antibiotics is not 100% effective. Nothing is. So once they started with that, that's when my antenna went up, and I'm like, well, hold on one second. don't fucking bullshit me. Don't tell me something's safe and effective 100% when there's no way. Even if it were, you couldn't know that yet. They didn't have enough time.
There was no time to study at that point.
Yeah, but I think Bobby Kennedy has done. He's taken a lot of heat for the things that he's done there, but I think he's been an asset. I think it's a good thing to have somebody with that sort of name, that notoriety, to be out there bringing these things up. And remember, they were blocking people from even saying what we just said, which is,
if we had been saying this on YouTube at that time, we would have been, this channel would have been shut down.
And what we just said, that's innocuous. It was nothing. I mean, we were just saying, how can you tell me it's 100% safe and effective? But yeah, you're right. It would have been banned. All right. Anyway, Mike, let's get to our headlines here. Oh, you know what? I'm going to do this one because it's kind of related here. So there's a new book out by Bob Woodward, who in the past has done some very good work. Obviously, he was one of the original Watergate reporters.
Yeah, all the president's men,
I mean, he's got connections up the ass, and most of his work is good. The last couple of things, a little shaky. I didn't read the book yet, so I'm not going to lie and pretend like I know. So this is just actually something I read about it. So it actually just came out a couple of days ago. The book is called War, and it covers the Biden and Trump presidencies. And in it, supposedly, and again, I didn't read it yet, so I can't accuse him of not having great sources on this. Maybe he does. But he said that, let me make sure I read this right, Trump gave Vladimir Putin a bunch of COVID tests early in the pandemic. Yeah. And, of course, this is getting people mad because, we were supposedly short on those tests and anything. They were just for his personal use. He wasn't giving it to him to give to Russians. I guess it was for him and maybe his family or whatever. Again, this is not verified. This is just according to Bob Woodward.
Okay.
And also that Trump has called Putin personally, quote, as many as 7 times since he's been out of office. So this is obviously causing, things in the mainstream media, and people say,
is this their October surprise? They're trying to kind of.
I don't think this is the October surprise. I mean, this book's been in the works obviously for a couple of years.
Probably, yeah.
But and these are just 2 lines in the book. I mean, there's a lot of things in there that were embarrassing to Biden and so forth.
I'm sure.
But those 2 particular things, let's take them at face value and assume they're true, even though we don't know. Okay. Right. So Trump, during the height of the pandemic, in the early days of the pandemic.
Okay.
When the tests were first kind of
coming out,
apparently the Russians didn't have any, and apparently Putin asked Trump if he could send them some. Trump did.
Okay.
I'm assuming a handful. And also part 2 of this is Trump apparently has had as many as 7, which could mean calls. 1, by the way.
Right.
As many as 7, right? Personal phone calls with Putin. So.
Okay.
You can guess how people on the opposite end of the spectrum are talking about that, and what say you?
I don't see the issue. Like I get the COVID testing. To me, that seems like a non-issue.
Why?
It's another world leader. You're trying to extend an olive branch. You're trying to show some kind of concern and care and stuff. It's still somebody you have to deal with on the world stage. And okay, I sent them some COVID tests today, but maybe tomorrow when we have to have this tough conversation about Ukraine, it might be just that much easier to say, listen, obviously we're both world leaders here. We're both human beings at the end of the day. Let's talk about this. So I don't see that as being necessarily a negative. I just don't see the negative in that. I get, maybe it's not what people expect, but I don't think it's bad diplomacy at all. Honestly.
And what about the 7 phone calls as a private citizen? Again, assuming this is true.
If we're assuming the calls are
and we don't know if he called him to wish him a happy birthday or if he called him about Ukraine. We don't know, but
yeah, I mean, it could have been a number of things, right? But. I don't think it wouldn't surprise me if he had, honestly, because he's been such a force, even outside of office, right? Even since 2020, when Biden took over, he's still been a very big force in the world, right? He met with the Polish Prime Minister recently. Mm-hmm. He's
who are you talking about?
Trump. He met with the Polish Prime Minister recently. I mean, he's met with a lot of them, and he's still been involved somewhat. I mean, you had Obama met with the Prime Minister in England not that long ago.
Right.
So I don't see it being a major issue to me. It doesn't strike.
I guess they're trying to make that connection
that they always puppet make. Thing. Yeah. They're trying to play the Russia hoax again.
Right.
And it's like you beat the dead horse. Now you're digging it up to beat it again. Like it's dead. Let it go.
Yeah.
I just don't see that. I don't see any smoke.
And what Bob Woodward doesn't tell us is if Trump also sent COVID tests to the Prime Minister of Nepal.
Yeah, Nepal or somebody. Exactly.
Who knows, right? So it's always about the the Russia stuff and the Putin stuff, and the Putin's evil and Trump called him, and therefore Trump is evil. Ex-presidents do keep in touch with
the world leaders.
Look, if he's conducting diplomacy, then that probably crosses a line, But again,
if he's diplomacy is not allowed. But I mean, if he's just calling to wish the guy happy birthday, happy anniversary, or whatever,
or even if he's talking to him and just like in a roundabout way saying, Vlad, you got to chill with this Ukraine stuff,
sure,
anything. I don't see what the big deal is, but of course, everything that has to do with Trump and if it's related to Putin is a big deal.
It's very polarizing, right?
Yeah.
If you step back from whether you're a fan of his or not, just step back from the whole thing. From either side, just step back from the whole thing and look at it, and look at the way both sides treat any issue with this. It is so damn polarizing, but it's only polarizing because we allow it to be. It's only polarizing because we use it as some kind of lever against one another, which is ridiculous. We're all on the same side. We succeed or we fail together, regardless of what one side or the other thinks. We're gonna succeed or fail together. One half of this thing is not going to carry the thing forward. It's just not going to work that way. It just doesn't. It collapses. You need that structural support that people have that make things work. So the polarization crap can stop right now, today, if people would just climb down off their high horses and actually try and be a little bit reasonable with their friends, neighbors, family, not this constant, oh, you're on that side, I can't deal with you. Like, that's ridiculous and stupid. That's one aspect of one person's life. Put it aside. Treat people like people, and just do what you gotta do.
But as kind of a corollary to that, I mean, you're talking about Americans with Americans, but to me, it's like, when did talking with world leaders become a bad thing? This is a negative thing that Trump talked to Putin 7 times. Biden should have talked to Putin 700 times
until his war stopped.
Right, over the last couple of years, instead of cutting off any line of communication. I remember Trump. I can't quote him because I don't remember exactly, but I'll paraphrase. But in an interview, probably about a year, maybe 2 after his presidency was over, they had asked him, is there any mistakes you made as president, anything you regret that you would do differently? Never heard Trump answer that kind of a question in the affirmative. Usually he'd say no. But he actually said, yeah. I mean, he kind of thought about it for a second. He said, yeah. He said because of the, what he calls the Russia hoax, he says he felt that he was under too much political pressure where he was not able to have the relationship with Putin that the leader of America should have with the leader of Russia and be able to talk, because he kind of felt hesitant
to make that connection because he felt like nobody was against him.
Exactly.
That makes sense, actually. That makes sense.
Maybe if Trump didn't have feel that kind of political pressure, maybe this war could have been avoided. I mean, he's always saying it never would have happened if I was president. There's no way to know. But maybe had he been able to have a
more
better
robust relationship.
Yeah, sure.
Listen, I think it'd be important, right?
And along those lines, I mean, this is 30 years ago, but there's a new book out by someone named Steve Cole called The Achilles Trap. And it's about the whole history of the Iraq War going all the way back to like the 1980s. And he quotes Bill Clinton in this book, quotes him as cursing the political pressure that he had gotten from his own people that would not allow him to call and talk one-on-one with Saddam Hussein. Now, that's not forgivable because he's the president of the United States. He could tell them all to go screw themselves and say, I'm making this call. But he said that he wished he was able to because Saddam didn't have these weapons of mass destruction. That was going to become a thing 5 years later. This is right around the time, I don't know if you remember, in the late 80s, right around the time of the impeachment, we had sent some missiles over into Iraq a few times. And the accusation was a wag the dog thing, that Bill Clinton's just doing this to get people's minds off of Monica Lewinsky. And it turns out now that we have this guy, through Freedom of Information Act, was able to get a lot of documents and everything and find out that not only was it not a wag the dog thing, not only was he not trying to get Americans' attention off Monica Lewinsky, he wanted to avoid it. He wanted to be able to talk to Saddam Hussein, but he was afraid of the political pressure that was on him to not do this. And just that blows my mind, Mike, that any president of the United States, whether it's Clinton or Trump, would literally be fearful of talking to a foreign leader, and this is the pressure that's put on by the military-industrial complex and the intelligence organizations that want wars, and don't want this kind of diplomacy.
They don't want diplomacy. They want to sell bombs.
Yeah.
They want to bomb a country to the Stone Age, and then BlackRock will come in and get their piece of the pie by rebuilding it.
Yep.
It's corruption at the very core.
Anyway, what do you guys think? Taking Bob Woodward at his word, if Trump did give COVID tests to Putin, and if he has called him as many as 7 times since he became president, you think that's an issue? Not? I don't know. Whatever. Up to you.
I don't think I can't see you hanging your hat on that one.
I don't see it either, but I would bet you if the election weren't coming up in 2 weeks, that would have been ignored.
Yeah.
But just they probably scoured through Woodward's book just to find something.
Well, there's a whole
they typed
army.
in AI. They said, "Trump Putin, find me a line."
Yeah, listen. There's a whole army of people out there that are just doing anything they can to get the guy. He's got legions of haters apparently.
He does. All right. Next, let's get to something a little bit more serious. So it hasn't been confirmed, but as close to confirmed as possible. About 2,000 North Korean troops, roughly a battalion, right? Would that be a battalion?
About a battalion. About 2 battalions worth. So about right.
So 1 or 2 battalions worth of North Korean troops. It is confirmed that they are in country. They're in Russia.
Right.
It is confirmed that they are suiting up, getting weapons and everything. Not confirmed exactly yet if they're going to be frontline fighters or not, but it looks like North Korea has, made some sort of a deal with Putin to send this fairly significant amount of soldiers over there. To what extent they're going to be used, we don't know. If he's going to follow international law, they could be used in the Kursk area on Russian territory, and that wouldn't be an issue at all. But if North Korea is going to fight in the occupied areas against Ukraine, that could cause a severe escalation in this, I guess. What are your thoughts on that? So again, it is confirmed that they're there. Right. We just don't know exactly what role these troops are going to play. Might just be cannon fodder, knowing Putin, who knows. But what do you think, Mike?
Interesting.
You haven't heard that?
I knew there was troops there. I heard there were troops there, but what I was thinking about was this. So Kim Jong-un's been rattling that saber a lot lately. A lot. And he's currently rattling the saber on a Korean peninsula, basically telling the South he's ready to go to war. He's going to go to war. They're going to fire on the South. And the South has been actually pretty much like their version of DEFCON 1 for a few weeks now.
Haven't they been on that for like 60 years?
Yeah, but think of it like plus. So they're at a heightened state right now because they expect it. They believe that there actually is going to be an attack from the north.
Do you?
I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. I mean, Kim Jong-un's country is failing, right? His people are starving. Obviously, China and Russia now are kind of pumping more aid into that country to help them out.
Sure.
If I was a betting person, what I would say is that him sending a couple of thousand of his troops to Russia would be a good opportunity for his guys to interview, train with, and even observe frontline forces and gain some experience about actual frontline combat. So basically learn the lessons learned from the Ukraine that these guys are facing so they can bring it back to North Korea in case they decide to invade South or they get into a war with the South. That's my thought. Like that many troops, 2,000 troops, you're not turning the tide of battle in Ukraine. It's just not going to happen. There's just too many people there.
No, of course not.
But it'd be a good opportunity to train a core group of fighters for your own army to get them up to date and up to speed on actual modern tactics and warfare and bring that knowledge back to your troops back home so you could actually stage your own invasion or even repel one if you need to, whatever the case might be.
But you're right, it won't make a difference on the front line, but it might make a difference in Kursk, Mike.
Kursk? Kursk is not it's not heavily...
Because then the Russians don't have to divert...
forces from the south or somewhere else,
The only thing that worries me is nobody does something for nothing, right? So what is North Korea going to get in return for this? And I'm thinking nuclear technology.
Probably a more advanced technology. I mean, they have nukes already. Not many, right? Just a few. I think 5 or 6 right now they're estimating. Yeah. But maybe upgraded missile weaponry to carry the nukes, ICBMs, maybe something like that. Yeah.
No way to know, but maybe. But this is just another example of Biden's failed foreign policy. I mean, he's driving these...
people together.
Yeah, he is. And it's just, I'm not terrified of it yet because I still don't think any country is suicidal or very many countries are suicidal. But he's really brought these countries together like China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, countries that always had kind of issues with each other and never really
traditionally wouldn't trust
each other. You know,
and now they're being forced into each other's corner.
Yeah. But, you know, there's also hypocrisy here that, you know, we're making such a big deal. Oh, my God, another country, how dare they help Russia? Meanwhile, we're helping, the Brits are helping, the Poles are, everybody's helping Ukraine, but Russia's not allowed to get outside help. I don't know, a little hypocritical, you know, do as I say, not as I do. But I do worry about what they're going to get in return, because like I said, nobody does something for nothing.
Especially not North Korea.
And even a dictator still has to have, you know, the support, if not the fear, of his people, right? So you gotta, he's got to present this to his people in a way that they can understand.
Well, he's like they're so indoctrinated in North Korea.
They are.
They are so indoctrinated from birth on that to them he's almost like a living god.
He not almost, yeah.
Yeah, you know. So I mean, for them it's a different animal completely. But I think that, you know, this is more of just a cementing of their bonds in their relationship. I know Russia and China have both been. They've been helping North Korea with, like, you know, obviously with materials for, like, food, medicine, stuff like that for a long time now.
Well, they're sanctioned up the ass, and all these countries are, and, again, that drives them together. You know, we have this very strange belief in America that we can impoverish people, and that will get them to turn against their government, and it's just never worked. It never worked with Cuba. It doesn't work with Venezuela.
No,
all it does is give these despots a boogeyman. Like, they could turn to their people and say, you're suffering not because of our terrible socialist policies. You're suffering because these evil Americans aren't allowing food to get in.
The capitalists are trying to starve you out. Yeah.
Sure, and that works.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about it.
It does. What country do you know of, can you think of, that we've sanctioned, and the result of those sanctions were the people rose up against their government, overthrew them, and became what we wanted them to be? Can you think of any example?
Never happened.
No? So I
can show you 100 examples from the Church Committee where the CIA was directly implicated in the overthrow of actual elected governments.
Oh, all the time, yeah.
We could look at that.
I'm talking about, you know, the whole goal of sanctions, right, is that...
It's supposed to change behaviors of nations, but it doesn't work.
But the idea that you're going to impoverish people or starve people or hurt people in some way, and they're going to love you for it.
Well, we're going to collapse your economy.
We're going to collapse, or we're going to bomb you, and you're going to feel liberated.
You know, we're liberating you from your own, you know.
We're liberating you by blowing you into oblivion. I don't know. I just don't understand this stuff.
That's 60 years or so of our deep state government there at work, you know, enriching corporations and screwing everybody else around them.
But beyond the deep state, Mike, just these 4 years of Joseph Robinette Biden at the helm as leader of the free world, when we see how the geopolitical situations around the world have changed for the worse.
Oh man, it's dramatic.
It's unreal.
Absolutely dramatic.
I just can't think of any other administration that's done this much damage.
Never, none.
And the guy is, in his mind, he thinks he's wonderful. He makes these speeches as...
Well, that's the problem.
What?
That's the problem. Who said it? The guy said that he's been wrong in every foreign policy.
Bob Gates.
50 years, right? Bob Gates said that, yep. So, I mean, and Bob nailed it. And then Obama said, don't underestimate Joe's ability to fuck things up. And Obama was right on that one.
He sure was.
You know, this guy is... I would not... I mean, him coming into office, I knew it was going to be a disaster. I would never have predicted it would have gotten as bad as it did on the world stage. He literally lit the world on fire.
And I'm not even talking, you know, forget the positive, you know, I don't want to say the political thing because people can think politically what they want, but just objectively looking at the world 3 years ago.
Yeah,
as opposed
pre
to
and post.
Real things. I don't want to hear about the threat to democracy, all of that sort of
stuff. No. We're talking actual conflicts, actual suffering, actual economic collapse.
Right.
It is dramatic difference.
Terrible.
Night and day.
Just terrible.
Night and day.
You know, and I think that, I mean, I know we're going to do this in our next video about the campaign, but I think that's one of the main things that's keeping Kamala afloat, and it's weird because I thought she was going to take the blame and, you know, sort of be held accountable for the Biden administration's mistake, but I think what is kind of keeping her afloat and keeping her alive in the polls is that next to Biden, that coffee cup over there looks like it would be a great president. So maybe it had the maybe it had the reverse effect than what I had thought in the beginning. At the beginning, I thought when she was in there, I was like, oh, you know, how can they possibly anybody support her because, you know, she is in this administration. But I think it's almost like, you know, when you go to pick up girls in a bar when you were younger, right? You know, the mediocre looking girl looks great if she's standing next to a real ugly one, right? So Kamala looks great next to Biden, even though she's not.
Yeah.
You know, but she's not him.
And she had a media carrying a lot of water for her too. You know, so
Yeah,
that
either
helps.
way, but I mean,
helps, but you're right. Though
but
you're right
next
because
to him-
next to him, she does look like a competent leader. Even though what she does is just word salads and
looks a lot more
nonsense.
attractive than she really. I don't mean physically, but she looks a lot more attractive
as a candidate. Yeah,
because she's not him.
Him.
Remember, Mike, this is a historically unpopular president. Again, this is not my opinion. This is just fact.
by the numbers. Yeah,
By the numbers,
Yeah.
we have not had a president this unpopular because it's sustained. You know, President Obama's numbers, President Bush's numbers, they all dipped down below Biden's lowest numbers at some point, but then they'd rise back up. You know, and they had
just
their moments,
dropped and just stayed there.
and that was it. 6 months into his administration, he
It
went
collapsed,
down.
and then after he got
Never
Afghanistan
rose.
withdrawal, he never recovered from the withdrawal in Afghanistan. He never recovered.
Never changed anything. Like at some point, you
Nobody
gotta
got
look at it
fired.
and say,
Trump said it himself, or he said it at a rally. I think he said that. So nobody got fired, and he's absolutely right. Nobody got fired. Nobody got held accountable.
and nothing got changed. Like you would think at some point he'd look and he'd say, "All right, it's been a year. It's been a year and a half.
I know,
can't
because
get
he
my poll
surrounds
numbers over
himself.
40."
He creates his own echo chamber, right? He surrounds himself with people who are just going to yes him to death and then go do whatever they want to do anyway.
well,
That's exactly what's happening in our
I
administration.
guess a lot of presidents do, but I think the better ones try to surround themselves with opposing point of views. You know,
If you're smart, you would.
yeah. Listen, FDR had
Balance you out.
in his brain trust and cabinet and all the people around him. I mean, he had everything from outright communists
Yeah.
to the most conservative people in America.
Yep.
And he would pit them against each other sometimes just to
Because
have
you
them
couldn't-
arguing to get the best sort of.
Yeah, because then you're going to
information.
find the actual real no
Yeah.
shit answers to, okay, what's the real best
Right.
policy to go forward here?
Right.
Not to appease one side or the other, but just to actually find the right no shit. This is the best path forward with the least amount of nonsense for everybody.
Yeah. You would think. Listen, even Trump, to his credit, you know, he brought in people like John Bolton. He brought in people that
Yeah.
he didn't necessarily
Agree with.
with all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe not many, but whatever. All right. Anyway, so that's number 2. North Korean troops are in Russia. If they're as mercenaries, if they're in a Russian uniform, then it's a non-story. They're just mercenaries.
Yeah, if they're in Russian uniform, they're mercenaries.
Because there are Americans fighting in Ukrainian uniforms.
Yeah.
But if they're fighting in
A lot
their
of
own uniforms, under their own flag, this could be a big escalation.
Sure.
You know, could be. All right, next. I don't know. Tell me what you think. I can't tell you what... I don't know what I think. So, recently, within the last couple of days, we were talking in our last video how Trump's support among African Americans is in double digits, which is
And
rare for a
steadily
Republican.
climbing, even still.
You know, so he's getting some support from the black community, but 3 very prominent African American athletes within the last couple of days have been at his rallies and endorsed him.
Yep.
Le'Veon Bell used to play on the Jets. Tommy Hitman Hearns, great fighter back from the 1980s and 90s.
Yep.
And Antonio Brown, who I know you don't follow football. I don't know if this is a guy you may necessarily want on your side. He's a little bit of off the wall, but these are 3 prominent black athletes of different generations. Tommy Hitman Hearns is not a young guy. Antonio Brown just got out of football. Anyway, we seem to be seeing more and more of this. I know we talked and we said endorsements don't matter, and you know nobody's going to vote for Trump because Thomas Hitman Hearns says I'm voting for Trump. But
you are exposing...
is there anything to this in your mind?
I think that... So, I don't think endorsements really carry races, but I do think they can help. And if we go just by the polling, let's just say the polling is absolutely accurate right now, right? And it's a direct reflection, accurate reflection. You know, the fact that you have somebody like that might give you the few thousand extra votes you need in whatever swing state to kind of turn that tide and win that race in that state. So it could help them in some ways. More telling than that, those 3 are obviously big ones. But there's been like all these influencers, these podcasters, like very big podcasters from the African American community, or black community, I should say. And then, you know, all these other people and like, you know, media personalities, things like that have all, over the last couple of weeks, really started to come out and force for him. You know, the momentum is definitely behind him, and I think within the black community and within every community, Latino community, black community, whatever community you're talking about, I think you're seeing big gains in every community, simply because they've had the contrast. They've got to see what 4 years of Kamala will probably look like under Biden, you know, and then they've seen already 4 years of what Trump looked like, and they had more money and they had more stability, and their sons and daughters weren't going off to die somewhere.
Right, but these are guys that are going to be rich no matter who the president is, right? So,
you'd hope.
well, I would think. I
would hope.
If these guys blow the millions of dollars they made, that's on them. But so I kind of think of it a little different. I have the same conclusion. I do think it helps, but I think it's a different thing. I think because you would not have seen this in 2016 or 2020, right? It was almost like, I don't know, people were hesitant, especially famous people, to even say something nice about him out of kind of fear of being ostracized or something like that. It seems now, I think, I don't know, maybe somebody correct me, I think the sociological term for this is a social epidemic, when something just starts to spread like an epidemic, right? And the example I would give is a reverse one, like smoking. When we were growing up, you smoked cigarettes. That's what people did.
Everybody did.
Everybody smoked cigarettes. Our parents did. You smoked everywhere. You smoked in restaurants. You smoked everywhere. Now, and it was quote unquote cool, right? If you were a cool kid, you smoked.
That's what you did.
But that changed, right? And it's not even the laws. It's not even about the not being allowed to smoke in restaurants. Smoking is just smoking cigarettes anyway. Ironically, smoking weed is fine, but smoking cigarettes, you kind of get those looks from people.
And it's
right?
frowned upon now.
Yeah, it's frowned upon
now.
And that's kind of like what it was if you came out and said something nice about Trump. If you were a famous person, right? It would be that kind of
frowned upon. You might be canceled in some way.
Yeah, and now it almost seems like people feel like they've gotten permission, and it spreads. When you see some people doing it, then you say, oh, if they could do it, I could do it. And you're seeing more and more now. And again, I don't give a shit deep down what a celebrity thinks about any candidate, but I think it shows just more of an openness or a willingness of people to publicly support Donald Trump, and that's got to signify something big.
Courage is contagious, right? Mm-hmm. Courage is contagious. It really is. So when you get somebody like Elon Musk, for instance, right, comes out and endorses Donald Trump, starts a PAC and puts $25 million in it to help him win swing states, that's a big catalyst for a lot of people in that same kind of sphere, I guess, in some sense, right? To kind of come forward and say, well, if this guy could do it and he's got that much to lose and I don't have that much to lose, then I can definitely do it.
Right.
So it's a big catalyst. So courage is contagious.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, though. The momentum is behind the man. I really do believe that.
Feels that way.
It feels like that momentum is behind him, and we'll see how.
And I try very hard not to say it because I am biased, obviously, and
so am I. But I mean,
most of the people in my world are Trump supporters, so it's hard to gauge.
I have friends across the spectrum.
I have friends across the spectrum, but most of the people in our family and in our regular day-to-day world, they're mostly Trump supporters.
But I think what's probably surprised me the most about this season, just to kind of touch on it real quickly, is that how many of my Democrat friends are telling me they're going to vote Trump this time. That surprises me. I mean, these are not Trump fans at all, right? These people do not like the man, but they're going to vote Trump, and they flat out said it. And it kind of surprised me, honestly. It really did. But again, I think that they've all kind of had a glimpse of what the world would look like in 4 more years. It would be a much, much worse scenario. So.
So we'll see. I mean, but I do think that people like Thomas Hitman Hearns and famous football players just feeling that, just being willing to and not hesitating to say that they're on his side, I think shows something
the world's shifting.
Different.
Yeah, there's definitely a shift, though. Look at cancel culture. You don't hear much about that anymore. That kind of went by the wayside, that whole cancel culture thing. I mean,
I hope you're right.
Little blips here and there, people trying to cancel somebody, and it basically just goes nowhere. Because it's just kind of like lost its oomph, things like that. I feel like they're very short-lived, like things in society.
Well, I hope you're right. I really do. I hope you're right. Listen, as far as canceling, I've always said you can't do anything to me because I have the opposite of fuck you money. I'm fuck you broke. There's nothing you could take from me. You want to take my 2020 car that I still have 5 years left to pay off? It's yours. Phenomenally, these fucking assholes out there. I'm gonna cancel you.
It's a stupid.
Oh God! All right, next one. This one's kind of interesting.
Okay.
So there was an article in today's New York Post about the quote unquote price of the American dream. It was interesting how they did this. What they did is they do this every year. I didn't know this, but they take into account in any given year what the basic tenets of the quote-unquote American dream would be. What you would need for retirement, an average of 8 to 10 cars in your lifetime, which I guess is fair if you think about it, right?
Sounds about right, yeah.
2 weddings, I guess putting either for your kids or yourself. I'm sorry, that would be for you, a wedding. Raising 2 kids, that's probably the average, I guess, including sending them to college, buying a home, keeping pets, taking an annual vacation, and then I guess the end of the American dream, your funeral. And they add all those costs together, and they say, what would it cost the average person over their lifetime to live the American dream? Now, of course, that's going to rise every year.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you have a kind of a static inflation that kind of continuously
so
grows.
it's always going to go up.
Not the actual other side of
But
inflation.
listen to how much it went up, Mike.
Okay.
Mind-boggling. I'll read just the beginning of this to you. The price of the American dream, including all those things that I just said, okay, over your life, now stands at $4.4 million, a mind-boggling $1 million more than was estimated last year. Last year, it was $3.4 million. This year, it's $4.4 million. Over the course of your life, and again, who knows how accurate this is, but the point's the point, right? The point's the point. So, from last year, if you were alive last year, to live the American dream would have cost you over your lifetime $3.4 million in just 1 year, Mike. It went up $1 million. You ready for this? Here are the numbers. Inflation overall, up 21% over the last 3 years. The cost of a wedding, that's over the Biden administration.
Yeah.
The cost of a wedding this year, if your kid got married this year, as opposed to last year, 24% higher for a wedding. Over a new car, the price of 8 new cars over a lifetime. The estimate last year, this year, you ready for this? 200% higher. So and again, this is not to survive. Obviously, to survive, you need a lot less. You don't have to have new cars. You don't have to go on a family vacation. You don't have to have pets. You don't have to throw an extravagant wedding. You don't have to do those things. So I know people in the comments who say, well, you don't need to do that. We know that. But the American dream, to live this life.
The way most people want to live.
Right, to live this life. To be able to take your kids to Disney World or, go up to the mountains for the summer, something, whatever. So, $1 million in 1 year. It's gone up.
$1 million
What are your thoughts?
In a friggin' year.
It's an interesting article, right?
It's amazing.
Yeah, I saw that and I thought of you. I thought you'd like that. So, what are your thoughts on that? It's, by the way, if you guys want to read that, it's in today's New York Post. The headline is "American Scream," with the S in Scream with the $sign. New York Post is great at the headlines, but
listen, that's a perfect headline for that.
So, what are your thoughts?
That is insane. There is no more damning indictment of the current administration than that right there.
Yeah.
That should be a Trump ad. That should be a Trump billboard across the country, everywhere. Yeah. You post those numbers up. You put that out there to anybody, anywhere. And they might curse out Trump in public, but I guarantee you in that damn voting booth, they're going to be like, screw this shit. And they're going to be voting Trump. Like, holy crap. That's amazing. We all know it's high, right? I mean, you feel it. I feel it. The supermarket gas, whatever, everything's more expensive. Like, you just don't have that much. It's tight. Everything's tight. So we all feel it, obviously. But wow. Yeah. Wow. I
mean, listen, your oldest daughter is almost old enough to be thinking about getting married now. And imagine you'd be paying 24% more for her wedding this year than you would have just last year. We're not talking
That's what blows my mind. I'm not talking about over 3 years. I'm talking about just 1 year, one calendar friggin' year.
Yeah.
12 months, and they were able to jump it up that much.
Yeah.
That is insanity.
It's incredible.
Absolute insanity.
And there are a lot of people out there who are under this impression that the president doesn't really have a lot to do with the economy. Now, it may be overblown. Obviously, no president could snap their fingers and sign an executive order and change the economy. But, Mike, fiscal policy matters.
Well, yeah, absolutely
matters. It fucking matters. And when you inject the amount of cash into the mainstream that he has done over the last 3 years...
You watered the dollar down so much that there's no choice but for it to inflate.
Of course.
He created a tremendous inflationary bubble. And it's going to get, listen, I don't think it gets better, right? I mean, listen, Trump's presidency, he'll get in, he'll do what he can do to fix things, but that's not getting better right out the gate. You know, that's going to take a ripping off the Band-Aid moment at some point to kind of, you know, deflation, like, you know, some kind of ugly event or some kind of ugly period where things are a little bit ugly for a minute until it gets better.
Yeah.
It's going to be, really, this guy he created so much damage in such a short time.
He did, and again, I do understand that sometimes you're president at a certain time, and it could go either way. The business cycle could just take a great turn. Things just get great, and you get credit even though you didn't do shit. Yeah. And there are times where things are uncontrollable, things like COVID, happening, or there are many different things that could happen where it's out of the president's control, but they're going to get blamed because they're in charge. But in this particular situation,
that's directly him.
So much evidence that it was his policies that caused this. But it's mind-boggling to think that the price of living the quote-unquote American dream has gone from 3.4 million in 1 year.
That is what happens when you put in a boob who can't see past his own bullshit, and he hires a bunch of friggin' activists rather than actual subject matter experts and people who are capable of leading.
Yeah, I think
that's exactly what the hell that is. This last 4 years is exactly that. It's activists and this narcissistic boob that is sitting there. Yeah. There's no real leadership anywhere in that mix. There's no real experts anywhere in that mix.
Oh, there are plenty of experts. They're just fools.
No, they're not experts on anything. They're experts on being fucking bullshitting. Listen, I don't consider someone who's read enough books to be an expert, right? That to me is just not it. You could read a billion books on farming and tell me all about farming, but you know who I want to learn farming from? A fucking farmer.
Listen, experts should be taken into account, right? I mean, you do.
They have their place. Listen, the researchers, the academics, whatever, they have their place.
They do. And Waltz and J.D. Vance actually had a little bit of a debate on this, right? Because Waltz was talking about how you have to quote-unquote listen to the experts, and J.D. was kind of saying, no, not always. And I kind of agree with J.D. Vance. Not that you should ignore experts. Again,
no, but
you want your car fixed, you go to a mechanic. I get it. But we elect people to make decisions. We don't elect them to sublet those decisions out to quote-unquote experts. That was the problem I had with Trump and Biden when it came to Fauci. Fauci should have, whatever you think of him, good, bad, or indifferent, should have never been in front of the fucking camera. Ever. No. And not just because he's Fauci. None of them should have been. They should have been in their labs, writing out reports, sending it to the president, and then let the president make a decision. And by the way, there's not a partisan thing with me. I used to cringe during the war in Afghanistan and Iraq when President Bush would always say, we have to do what the generals ask us to do. And I would always say to myself, no, you actually don't. We have a civilian leadership of the military for a reason. Every general wants more ammunition and more men and more leeway. You don't do what the generals want. You take into account what the generals want. Our great presidents, Harry Truman fired MacArthur because MacArthur wouldn't listen to him. Yeah. Lincoln fired McClellan because McClellan wouldn't listen to him. We elect presidents, not generals. So it's the same thing, right? The generals are the experts on the battlefield. Yeah, take into account what they're saying, but you don't just sign the paper because the generals told you to.
Yeah, you don't do that. But that's what Congress did with all our federal agencies, right? Getting back to the conversation earlier.
Yeah.
That's exactly what our government has done. Yeah. From Biden on down, from the president on down, it's been this carte blanche given to these federal agencies to do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, this whole idea that we should be led by experts is absurd. And secondly, if experts disagree with each other, Mike, they're supposed to.
Yeah, all the time, because they have different interpretations of the same data sets. They're going to look at the things differently.
And that's why I hated when they censored any doctors that had anything opposite to say to Fauci, as if Fauci was, the god on this.
Oh, listen, you were supposed to worship him, right? You were supposed to be,
I mean, take into account what Anthony Fauci says. That's fine. I mean, his job was at the CDC, whatever. Take it into account. But for crying out loud, you don't just do something because that man said this is the thing to do.
Well, this goes back to our media, our current...
And Trump did that as well as Biden.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, this goes back to our media also, though, right? Because the media kind of carry the water for this whole thing.
Of course.
Because they're the ones that come after you for trying to come against them and trying to say anything it's so backwards.
It really is. All right, Mike, we're getting kind of late here. Let me give you the last one.
Okay.
This happened, I think, yesterday. So yesterday, and by the way, there's some stories here that this may have even just been a stroke of good luck for the IDF, that it wasn't a plan. But either way, the Israeli Defense Force, the IDF took out the leader of Hamas, the equivalent of
Sinwar.
The equivalent of what
Bin Laden
would have been to Al Qaeda.
Yeah.
They took out, his name is Yahya Sinwar.
Sinwar, yeah.
The leader of Hamas.
Hamas, yeah.
So that's the headline, but the question is now, should that be it? Should this war be done now? They've wiped out Hamas. They've cut the head off of the fish. The rest of the fish is supposed to die. What role do you think this event should play? Not what it will play, because we don't know. In your opinion, what role should this play in the war?
Well, he was the mastermind of October 7th. This was the guy who actually planned the massacre.
That's why I said he's like the Bin Laden of...
Right, he's the mastermind. So, I mean, they took him out with a drone strike. They had drones, like, you've seen the drone video of, like, him sitting in a chair with throwing a stick before he dies. To my mind, you've kind of completely decimated that organization and its ability to operate as a terrorist organization. Pull back on Hamas front, right? Stop the dying. Israel has an absolute right to defend themselves, and they have an absolute right to do what it takes to defend their people.
Sure, of course they do.
I'm never going to question that. But, there is the other side of it where you say, okay, have we done enough? Have we avenged our people, or have we done enough to say that we can keep them safe going forward? I would say at this point, Hamas is probably completely, destabilized. There's probably no ability for them to realistically operate in any real fashion. Maybe limited local attack, but nothing probably at all that's of any significance at all. So for me, looking at it, not knowing obviously as much as they know about it, but looking at it from that perspective, I would say it's probably the time to just kind of cut that whole thing down.
Yeah, I gotta say, I agree with you.
Because, they're fighting two fronts right now anyway. You're fighting Hamas on one side, but now you're fighting Hezbollah and Iran on the other.
Which was their choice, to fight Hezbollah.
They didn't have to, but I guess they figured since they're already geared up, might as well gear up and take care of all problems at once.
But I think they're falling into the same hellhole that we fell into after 9/11, is that if you're going to get to the point where you say that you need to fight until you're completely safe, that's the definition of a forever war. You're never going to be completely safe.
Yeah, because there's always going to be the extremists or whatever out there that are just, it's a quagmire, right? It's never going to end. You'll be eternally fighting, and there's no reason for it.
Right. And again, this would be none of my business at all, except for the fact that we now have soldiers on the ground there, because just like in Ukraine, they say there's no American soldiers. There have to be, because these people are not trained to run the batteries that we're giving them. The
THAAD missile system,
yeah, they can.
THAAD missiles, anti-missile.
You need Americans to do that.
It's a defensive missile system. Yeah, take out incoming missile.
And you need our
guys
our intelligence and our surveillance and
because they're tied to our satellites.
Exactly.
Systems. Yeah.
So we are directly involved in this now. Again, with no congressional authorization, no public debate.
Yep.
So ordinarily, again, I would say whatever Ukraine needs to do, if they want to, bomb the Kremlin, go at it. If the Israelis want to try to decimate everything from the West Bank to Lebanon, go at it. I disagree, but it becomes my business when it's my country's soldiers and my country's money and my country's weapons. And I agree with you. I think it's now they have their media victory.
Sure,
right?
You've got your media victory, and you've decimated your enemy. That you've removed their ability to wage war,
or
any kind of effective attack against you for the most part.
Right. And if they think they're going to fight a war until they are completely safe forever, that's never going to happen.
No.
You'll always have a reason to fight more, just like we did. I think it's time for this to stop at this point.
Well, you got Israel's talking about now, like hitting Iran directly, and it's definitely escalating. You know what I mean? It's definitely escalating between Iran and Israel, which is extremely dangerous. Nobody look. The war in the Middle East needs to end. It does. It needs to end. I understand Israel's position. Don't get me wrong, and I absolutely get that.
So do I.
Protect your people by all means necessary. Without a doubt, I get it. But they need to kind of pull back from this whole let's go directly into direct conflict with Iran thing. I'm not saying Iran's not guilty of a whole bunch of stuff, but it's going to, escalate things at a level that really shouldn't be. And the Abraham Accords are going to kind of fall apart because of it, and you're going to lose a lot of support in that area that's needed to kind of balance things out and keep things maybe from going completely sideways.
Yeah, because those Arab governments, they're not too fond of Iran either.
They're sympathetic, but they also don't want a regional conflict.
Well, I don't know if I agree with you there. I don't think that the governments are so sympathetic towards the Palestinians and around.
No, I meant that's with respect to Israel.
I think the people, what they call the Arab Street.
Yeah, okay.
They're very much against Israel and very much against the Palestinians. And I've said it before, even in a dictatorship, even in a monarchy, even in a theocracy, you still have to keep your people satisfied.
Yeah.
Or you're going to be overthrown.
Because a certain amount of dissent will lead to a revolution.
Yeah, and that's not like getting voted out. You're going to die.
No, that's getting dragged out and hung.
Yeah. So I do hope, and this is one of the reasons why, again, these people say that we're just in a cult and all of that. No, I think my way through. I believe that Trump will, I have no way to prove it because I don't know anything about Harris. I know he'll be better than Biden when it comes to diplomacy. I believe he'll be better than Harris. And I'm not going to say something stupid like Trump's going to save the world, but I do believe Trump will try a hell of a lot harder to get these things settled.
Listen, that man, everybody trashes on the guy.
Man loves to be a deal maker and loves to, this guy wants to be the one who solves it.
That's just it. His personality is geared towards, he will go without sleep. He'll do whatever it takes to succeed, to win. Right? That kind of personality type in that office at a time like this, that's the perfect moment for that guy.
And let's be clear, by win, that means deal. That's what he wants. He wants
to stabilize everything and make the deals and that everybody's happy with and that everybody can live with and that things move forward in a positive way. Yeah. It doesn't mean Ukraine loses, doesn't mean Russia loses. It means that they come to a place where they can say, okay, we can accept this and you can accept that and we're done.
Yeah. And the problem in his first administration was he surrounded himself with people that didn't have that vision. People like Pompeo and
well, they were all like the Washington permanent class people,
But I hope, again, I can't do anything but hope. I hope this time
he picks a much better cabinet staff,
and I think he will because I think he learned. Trump will never admit he's wrong. So he'll never admit he was wrong. He will say, "Oh, I picked bad people because they were bad people," but he won't admit that he picked bad people because he made the mistake of picking them. But I think this time, I think he'll be smarter. At least that's what I hope. Yeah. And I think he'll surround himself with people who try to implement his visions of these things, and hopefully, listen. It's so funny that because Trump wants peace, you have an entire half of this country now that wants war.
Yes.
Just because they have to be against Trump.
That's insanity to me. That's that fanboy politics we talk about all the time, right? Yeah. And that's how dangerous it is. Yeah. You're wishing for death on a scale that you can't even imagine.
Because you know what it is, Mike? Because they don't know. And listen, I will never claim to know what you know. You lived it firsthand. But I could at least say I know.
Well, you have a very good
a lot
viewpoint of it. Well, yeah, because you're a historian. You know that. Yeah. You know the realities of it because you're a historian.
I've read the letters from soldiers.
Yeah, you've read the letters
back to their parents. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You've seen the videos. You've spent the time to study it to understand it. Yeah. Whereas most people don't. No. They get little glimpses on the nightly news and that's it.
And again, I'll never be a big enough asshole to say I know 1/1,000,000th of what you know because you had bullets flying by your head. But I do think
that was yesterday because I pissed off Lauren.
But I do think I have a pretty good academic understanding of war. You have the life experience of war. Yeah. I think people just nowadays think this is some sort of a video game sort of a thing, and they just don't understand the death and destruction and displacement and what this does to families and lives. And yes, it has to happen sometimes. I get it. I'm not a fool. It has to happen sometimes.
There's a place for it.
But every single thing possible should be done beforehand.
It should be the absolute last resort. Yeah.
It should be.
It should always ever be our last resort, without a doubt.
Bro, man, we're at about an hour over here. We may be boring the shit out of these people by now. What do you think of my new lid?
I love that hat. I think it's awesome. Nice. His hats are epic, right?
He's got it.
Guys, tell him about his hats on the comments. Hit those comments. Please. Let them know about his hats.
You don't want to see what's under here, which is nothing.
We're going to do a reveal video one day, and we're going to force him to do it.
All right, Mikey. Tell him what to do.
Do us a favor. Get in that comment section. Let us know what you think about what we're discussing today.
Please.
Give us your thoughts. Give us your feelings. Give us your evidence. Give us whatever you got. Just, try and be respectful, please. That's all we ask.
Because we engage, Mike. We do.
We do. We want to hear what you think. So we're going to put it back out there and respond to it. And we want this to be a conversation, not just, us throwing crap at you and you absorbing it, but an actual conversation.
Yeah.
So give us your thoughts. Even if you disagree with us, just tell us why. Just be respectful. That's all we ask.
And make your point, and we'll respond. Like I said, I don't like. I'm just not the type ever. I don't go on. I've said it a million times. I don't like typing in my answers, but I read yours, and then I try to respond on video here, and hopefully it just engages. It's engaging, and we want you to be a part of it, like Mike said.
So, like, subscribe, comment, share it out with like-minded friends, share it out with those who don't agree, so that way we can have that conversation with them. Really,
Absolutely.
we need to be all talking together. So,
and please get somebody to subscribe. One person in your life. Just tell them.
Yep. Help us grow the channel. Help us spread this word. Help us spread this.
Did you see Trump with his
conversation.
get out the vote thing? And it says, "Get your fat, lazy husband off the couch. Tell that fat, lazy pig to go vote." So we'll say the same thing. Get your fat husband to subscribe.
Yeah, just get
him
somebody
off the couch. Tell him to click subscribe.
Listen, help us grow the channel. Help us spread the word. Help us get this conversation going a little more
He's so funny.
widely. Okay?
Get that fat pig of a husband of yours off the couch and
He's a
tell him
sick
to
bastard.
get out and vote.
He's funny.
Hysterical.
You got to give him a try. He's funny.
All right, Miguel.
We appreciate all of you watching. We appreciate all you subscribed already. Thank you for the views. Thank you for the comments. Keep them coming. We love it. All right.
Join us for our next video. We're going to get in depth about the Kamala Harris
Brett Baer disaster.
Brett Baer interview. I got the transcript up. We're going to talk about that and the state of the election. Anyway, we got to go, man. That Met game's starting pretty soon.
Sorry. Have a good night, guys.
Take care, guys.